Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy A51 and see how this particular phone holds up in 2025. Now, this particular phone is a few years old now. It's not the latest and greatest anymore. It came out about 6 years ago, but it was a very, very popular phone when it first came out. And I would still say in a lot of ways, a lot of people might still look at this type of phone and still consider buying it, still consider using it. So I will tell you there are probably some better types of devices to go and buy rather than this one. So we'll take a look at it throughout this whole entire video. But if you do want to go ahead and buy some phones that I would personally recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description below. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of these particular devices. The very big thing to keep in mind with the Galaxy A51 is that this is kind of an older styling of a device, right? It came out back in 2019, so it definitely is showing its age quite a bit. And that's kind of what ends up happening when you're going to go through and pick up some of these older types of devices. They're going to be showing their age and they're going to be slightly older. So it's not really the biggest deal in the world, but it could just be one of those types of things that you might end up experiencing there. And that's one of those types of situations that you might run into. So like I said, personally for me, it's not really the biggest deal in the world, but if you are planning on going through and picking up some devices, it might make more sense to go and buy a device that might be giving you an overall better type of experience. On the front side of this phone though, you are basically going through and still getting a 6.5-inch Super AMOLED display. So this thing for the most part, it's not the most outdated thing in the world, but do keep in mind that if you are wanting a phone that is going to be giving you a better experience, there might be some better options there for the most part. And these ones might not be this phone might not be the first one. It's a 1080p panel, 60 Hz. It doesn't really get that bright. It's not the sharpest panel in the world either. So, it doesn't look terrible though, I will say. But like I said, if you are planning on going through and getting a phone, there are definitely a lot more types of phones that might be better than this particular device. And that's just one of those types of things to keep in mind here if you are planning on going through and picking up one of these types of devices. So again, it's not the biggest deal in the world, but it definitely will be one of those types of things you're going to end up experiencing here inside of these types of devices. Now you are getting a micro SD card slot inside of this phone, which in and of itself is amazing. Having a micro SD card is such a cool thing. I'm such a huge fan of that. And I will definitely say going through and getting the type of phone with that type of capability, I think is really awesome. So definitely in my personal opinion, getting a phone like that with that type of capability is such an awesome thing. And, I will say that adds a lot more kind of like a flair to your type of device if you're planning on buying it. So I will say from that particular perspective, again, that is another nice thing going on here for the most part as well. So, this phone is also still giving you USB Type-C, which that in and of itself is another cool thing. And like I stated before, I love having USB-C, and you're definitely going to be getting that type of capability inside of this type of device as well. Now, on top of that, another very big thing is that this phone is primarily pretty much built out of plastic. So it isn't really like the most premium feeling phone of all time. And I think that is one of those types of things to think about here too. So, this thing is not going to be feeling that premium. It's not going to be feeling that great. And that could be, once again, one of those types of small problems that you might end up running into here. So it might make a lot more sense to go through and kind of get a device that's going to be giving you just a better type of experience. And within this type of phone, that is kind of what ends up happening here for the most part. So in my personal opinion, this type of device doesn't really hold up too well from the build quality standpoint. You're getting your camera set up on the back, which we'll talk about in a second. But beyond that, like I stated, there's not really anything else super insane inside of this type of device that I haven't, seen that stood out to me so far. But, it's a pretty average type of device for the age of this phone and everything like that. Now, when you do kind of hit on the camera, this is something that's very interesting. The camera on this thing is giving you a 48 megapixel wide angle lens, a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 5 megapixel macro camera, and then a 5 megapixel depth lens. So this is another one of those really interesting things that kind of just ends up happening here too. So going through and picking up a phone like this is going to be one of those types of, cameras that's really not going to be that great. So this type of camera is basically giving you, 4K at 30 on the back and 4K at 30 on the front. So from that side, this is one of those types of things to keep in mind here, because this type of device is really going to be showing its age for the most part. And if you're buying a phone or you're buying some sort of device, you probably want to go through and pick up a device that is going to be giving you a better type of camera. And I doubt you want to go ahead and buy a device right now that's already going to be showing its age by the time you go ahead and pick it up. And that is precisely basically what's going to end up happening if you go through and buy this type of device. So from a camera standpoint, this thing really is not going to be giving you that good of an experience. And you're definitely going to be feeling like you're missing out on some things if you're going through and buying this type of camera when it comes down to it. So from that side too, that kind of covers that up there as well. Now, on top of that, another very big thing to keep in mind here are the software updates. This phone is basically kind of done getting software support, it's done getting software updates. And this is another one of those things that you might run into here where you might want to go and get a device that might give you a little bit of a better experience here, right? So with something like a Samsung Galaxy A51, this type of device for the most part, it's just not really getting any more software updates. In fact, it hasn't even gotten a software update in like years. So because of that, I look at this type of device and I just think it's just kind of one of those wishy-washy types of devices to go and pick up. I don't really think it's going to be a good device to pick up from that perspective. And I think there might be better machines to go and pick up and operate rather than this one. So that's just another one of those examples where I see a device like this, and in some ways it does hold up kind of well, but there are just way better iPads to go and buy, or way better Samsung Galaxy phones to buy rather than this one. And I feel like from that perspective too, this one just doesn't really make too much sense to go and buy when there might be better options out there. So I would definitely tell you from that particular perspective too, that is one of those big things to keep in mind there as well. On top of that, the performance of this Samsung Galaxy phone really isn't that great anymore either. It has the Exynos 9611 chipset with 4 to 6 to 8 gigabytes of RAM. So this type of device definitely does kind of, run into this type of problem again, where, it was kind of a decent performing phone back in the day, but it really is not a good performing phone anymore. And it's not terrible either, but there's just way better types of devices to go ahead and rather buy rather than this one. So from that perspective, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to go through and buy this type of device when there are better options out there. And that's just kind of how I see it, right? So in my personal opinion, for something like this, again, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense to go and buy a device like this when there are some better options out there. And with the Samsung Galaxy A51, this is one of those types of devices where I look at it and, I definitely do think for the most part, it is a decent type of device. Like it does have some good capability. I just don't know if this would be one of those types of devices where I would look at and I would recommend buying anymore. So in my personal opinion, when I do take a look at something like the Samsung Galaxy A51, I think these types of devices, they're good. They give you a lot of capability. And I do think for the most part, if you're going to go through and pick up a device, they do make a lot of sense to go ahead and, buy back in the day. They just don't make any sense to go and buy anymore. There are way more devices and way better types of devices to go and buy rather than this one. And this type of device, it just doesn't make that much sense to go and buy anymore. So in my personal opinion, it makes a lot more sense to go and buy a device that is going to be giving you more capability and just more power overall. And that's the way I would kind of look at it. And that's the way I would see it. So in my opinion, that kind of covers that up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.